Imagine you need a package picked up right now. You don't have a corporate account, you can't use an automated system, you just pick up the phone, make a single direct call, and boom, it's done. Well, in Copilot Studio, that is exactly what the HTTP request node does. You're stepping into the AB620 exam module for retrieving and sending data using this specific node. This explainer is going to break down exactly how, when, and why we use it. We're keeping our focus squarely on what you need to know for your architecture and, of course, your exam. Let's dive right into the mechanics.
So when do we actually use this node? Think back to that courier analogy for a second. If you have an established corporate hotline, you use it, right? In Copilot Studio, that hotline is a pre-built connector. But what if there is no custom connector for the system you want to reach? Let's say a customer asks where their shipment is, and your agent needs to query a carrier's tracking API directly. The carrier hasn't provided a connector, they don't publish an open API specification, and there's no modeled context protocol server. It's just a raw, ad hoc REST API. You need to make a single, isolated request. Send a tracking number, get the status, and hand it right back to the user. This is exactly where the HTTP request node shines. It handles this entire direct flow right there on the authoring canvas.
To really nail this concept for the exam, you've got to understand the architectural boundaries. On one side, we have connector tools and agent flows. These are built for reuse. If you need multi-step workflows with conditional branching that multiple topics can call upon, you build an agent flow. If you have a supported target system, you use a connector tool. But on the exact opposite side, the HTTP node is purely ad hoc. It's a single, self-contained request living entirely within one specific topic. There is absolutely no need for reuse elsewhere in your environment. It's built directly on the canvas. So the crucial takeaway here is knowing exactly when to choose it over those reusable options. Now, let's look at how we actually assemble this request on the canvas. Adding the node is super straightforward. You'll find it right under the Advanced section of the Add Node menu. But configuring it? That's where the magic happens. Think of the API endpoint URL as a shipping manifest. A static URL is like a truck going to the exact same warehouse every single time. But in our carrier scenario, we need a dynamic URL. We use a PowerFX expression to attach the user's specific tracking number directly to that manifest. We just take the base URL of the API and append the user's input dynamically. PowerFX creates a seamless link from the input straight through the process and right to the output. And since we're just retrieving a shipment status in this example, we select the GET method from our dropdown.
Okay, let's talk security. This is a massive focus for the AB620 exam. When your agent knocks on the door of an external API, it can't just walk right in, right? It needs an ID badge. That ID badge is your request header. Headers pass crucial metadata, like authorization tokens and content type specifications, straight to the API. But here's the golden rule, and you absolutely must remember this for your exam. Never ever hardcode API keys, bearer tokens, or any credentials as literal strings in these header fields. If you do, literally any maker with Canvas access can see them. Instead, you must store these credentials securely in environment variables. You then just reference that environment variable inside the header value field. This keeps your credentials completely off the canvas, making them manageable and, most importantly, secure across all your different environments. Let's move to the next step and see how this builds into the request body.
Moving past security, we have to deal with the request body. Think of the HTTP method as the type of delivery you're making. A GET request, that's like showing up with an empty box, asking the API to fill it. That's why the default setting here is no content. You simply aren't sending a body. But if you're using post, patch, or put, you are the one sending a package full of data to the API. Now, here is a critical real-world pitfall to watch out for. Let's say you send a post request with a JSON body, and the API just silently rejects it. Nothing happens. What went wrong? Well, 9 times out of 10, you forgot to put a label on your package. You absolutely must ensure your headers include content type application/JSON. Without that specific header, the API receives the data but has absolutely no idea how to parse the format.
Okay, so we've successfully sent our request, and the API answers back. Now what? The API is going to hand us a block of raw data. This is a lot like receiving a highly detailed return receipt. But Copilot Studio doesn't automatically know how to read this specific receipt right out of the box. We actually have to teach it the shape of the data, so it can convert those fields into usable variables. We do this using a brilliant feature called From Sample Data. You simply grab a sample JSON response directly from the API's documentation, complete with tracking numbers and delivery dates, and paste it right into the Get Schema from Sample JSON window. When you hit Confirm, Copilot Studio instantly generates a PowerFX variable schema based on that exact sample. Once that schema is generated, we assign the entire API response to a single variable, something like topic.trackingResponse. But we rarely want to just dump the entire raw JSON response into the user's chat window, right? We need to cleanly extract the specific pieces of information the customer actually asked for. And this brilliantly illustrates the power of PowerFX.notation. If you just want the status of the package, you type topic.trackingResponse.status. Need the delivery date? Topic.trackingResponse.estimatedDelivery. For your exam and for real-world performance, remember this architectural best practice. Capture only the fields your topic actually uses. Keeping your variable surface area minimal makes your topics much easier to maintain, it reduces memory overhead, and it keeps your IntelliSense super clean.
Let's shift gears entirely to what happens when things go wrong. Because, let's face it, in the real world of external APIs, things will absolutely go wrong. The tracking number might be fake, or the carrier server might be temporarily down. Imagine a customer calling a support line, and the moment the system can't find their order, the representative just hangs up the phone without a word. That's a terrible customer experience. Yet, by default, the HTTP request node is set to do exactly that. It uses raise an error mode. If the request fails, it stops the flow entirely and triggers a system error topic. For back-end internal bots, maybe that's acceptable. But for a customer-facing agent, never. We must protect the conversation. Also, keep in mind the default timeout is 30,000 milliseconds, or 30 seconds. If an external API is notoriously slow, manually increase this timeout. Don't let your agent prematurely drop the connection.
To prevent our agent from just hanging up on the customer, we need to implement a very specific three-step architecture. This is a highly testable concept for the AB620 exam. Step 1. Go into the error handling settings of your node and explicitly change it to continue on error. Step 2. Assign variables to capture both the HTTP status code and the error response body. For instance, you map the status to topic.statusCode. The topic will now continue executing regardless of a failure. Step 3. Add a condition right after your HTTP node. You want to check if topic.statusCode equals 200. A 200 code means everything is perfect, the request succeeded, and you can display the tracking result. Any other value? That triggers your fallback route, providing a polite message like, "I'm unable to retrieve your shipment status right now, please try again later." You keep the conversation moving, give a clear next step, and completely hide the ugly raw error details from the chat.
Configuring continue on error gives the user a clear path forward when external systems fail. But if you ignore this architecture, if you leave the default settings in place, if your HTTP node fails silently and drops the chat without any fallback message, who really owns that broken customer experience? It's not the external API, it is the architect who built the node.